Can we feed the world if everyone ate meat? There you go. There's an interesting question. And there's a kind of a fallacy built into that, which is this idea that if you argue for people eating meat, then you're arguing that everybody should eat only meat all of the time. I'm not arguing that. Our ancestors didn't eat only meat all of the time. They ate mostly meat most of the time. This is May in England, and there's not a lot to eat. It has to be said, unless it's animals or fish or whatever. Yeah, there's really not much for a human to eat around here at all. And I forage. I'm a forager. So our ancestors will have eaten pretty much exclusively meat and anything they'd stored, like maybe some nuts and stuff over the winter, some fatty cake or whatever. And in the high summer, they would have eaten some soft fruits, berries off the bushes, like pretty much we've got a load of brambles around where I am now. And these will be heavy with blackberries, but only like mid to late summer and into the autumn, right? You can't live on blackberries, unfortunately. They are very nice. And we'd have foraged fungi, we'd have picked shellfish out of the streams, we'd have created fish traps, we might have trapped birds, other small game, who knows? But mainly, yeah, we did eat meat most of the time. So, right, it's a kind of extension to ridiculousness, absurdity, to say, well, everyone eat meat all the time, but I don't even think it's impossible, to be honest. We've got a lot of land on Earth, right? And it's not terribly full, to be honest. Now, most of the land on Earth is not arable. Arable simply means ploughable, and so you can't really grow crops in it, right? So for land to be arable, it has to have a certain amount of topsoil, and which is another issue entirely. It needs to be flat, and needs to be not covered in rocks, and you need to be able to access it with whatever you're going to plough it with. But ploughing in itself is a very, very bad idea, and we shouldn't ever really have started to do it in the first place. But that's, again, a story for another time, boys and girls. So it's only a fraction, something like 4% of the Earth's land mass could be used for arable farming, for your row crops, for your corn and your wheat and your soy and all these other nasty things. There's a lot more land that we call marginal, as in it's not arable, but it can be used for grazing. So forests, right? Unless you're going to start burning those down, which is very silly and we shouldn't be doing it. Stop it. If you're burning down forests, stop. I'm telling you now, stop it. Okay, don't do it. In all seriousness, we've got all of the moorlands, the uplands, the hillsides, where sheep and goats and cows will very happily roam, and your mountain lions and your Amur leopards and all that kind of stuff, your pumas and everything can roam. So there's lots of areas of land where animals can quite happily go about their lives, consuming the available vegetation and turning it into animal, which, according to nature's laws, can then perfectly validly be recycled into other animals by turning it from herbivore into carnivore. And that's the way it is. So there's a lot of room to grow, to raise animals on Earth. What we can't do is feed ourselves indefinitely using the methods that we are using today, despite what people are telling you. They are liars and they are lying to you. The industrial methods of crop production that we have today are hands down unsustainable because they destroy the soil. If your soil gets weaker, if it loses organic matter, if it loses its very vitality with every harvest, then it doesn't take a genius to figure out that at some point it's not going to work anymore. It doesn't matter what you spray on it, it's dead. And the Romans used to grow most of their olives and most of their grains in the area of North Africa that we now call the Sahara Desert. Right, the Fertile Crescent, this eastern end of the Mediterranean, is known as the birthplace of the agricultural revolution. That's why it's called the Fertile Crescent. What is it now? Egypt, Palestine, Israel, Syria, Iraq. You know, when you think of those countries, do you think lush rolling green hills? No, you don't. Why? Because we ploughed it, and when you plough it, you destroy the soil. And now, you should see my plough. You should see the size of the machines we've got now that can destroy soil quicker than previous generations could have dreamed of. We are getting really, really good at destroying soil. So, there's a couple of arguments there. We can't even... are we producing enough food for 8 billion people now? Yes, no question. Everyone knows it. It's a fact. Are we distributing it properly to everyone? No, we're not. That is another fact, okay? Could we very easily make sure that all 8 billion people who are living in the world today could get enough to eat and not go hungry? Easy peasy. It would take about 1/10 of the US's military budget to eradicate poverty and hunger for good. But that's not the point of what we're talking about, right? But let's get on to the really knotty question. So let's say the world's population goes up to 10 billion, right? Do we know whether we could feed 10 billion people? Well, we know whether we can feed 10 billion people indefinitely using the processes that we have today, the industrial plant agriculture. No is the answer. We can't, because the soil will be gone in a few generations' time, everywhere. That's what we do. Could we feed 8 billion people or 10 billion people using on sheep and goats and cows and chickens and stuff like that? Answer is, I don't know. I don't know. I haven't figured it out. Don't know how much land there is and how do we manage it all and whatever. Because the real question, if you're talking morals, right, behind all of that is, should we feed 8 billion people? Should there be 8 billion people? Because what you need to understand is that natural law always wins out, right? Everything is kept in balance in nature. So your population of your gazelles, right, is kept in check in some way by your lions and so on, right? So the gazelles eat plants, the lions eat gazelles. If there's a bumper rainy season, then the plant life goes whoop, and the gazelles are very healthy and they get lots of energy and they will breed more and there'll be more gazelles. And when there's more gazelles, the lions will get more to eat and they'll breed more and there'll be more lions. Right? But then if there's a dry patch and there's less vegetation, the gazelles will die off because there's not enough to feed them. And then the lions will die off. And so you see how it all works. It's kept in a normal bell curve distribution. And that's nature. That's natural law. You can't get away from it. It's built into the fundamental laws of the universe, yeah? Now, the way that we do things is we try and break those laws, okay? And we do pretend that we break them very well because we plough the soil and we get many, like 10,000 times, 20,000 times more calories per unit of land by growing potatoes, right, than by hunting mammoth or hunting anything. Right? You get far, 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 far more calories. There's no question about that. But the problem is that you're mining the soil, right? To extract those calories, you're taking out more than you're giving back. And that's not sustainable. And at some point, nature is going to catch up with us on it. So, ain't going to work. So, philosophically, my response is to that question, can we feed 8 billion people? Well, don't know. But I tell you what I do know. I do know that we have to find ways of feeding ourselves that are sustainable, if not regenerative. Regenerative just means we are building natural systems. We are rebuilding the soil as we go. And we know how to do that. We have to use labour-intensive permaculture methods, or we have to use labour-intensive regenerative animal agriculture as well. None of that really fits the system that we live in today, because that's all about profit, and it's not very profitable. But it is sustainable. And if we want billions of us left on Earth, that's the way we have to do it. And I think we should let Mother Nature sort out the question of the numbers. And that's the hard truth of it, guys.